And now is an opportunity for general public comment. If anybody would like to speak and are signed in, we welcome general public comments.
And first up, we have Mr. Randy Lewis.
Hi everybody, Randy Lewis. I have another little speech on the debt issue, responding to comments made last week referencing my comments of a couple of weeks ago. First of all, I did not say that funds for Lake Boulevard was borrowed money. What I did say was that there was $2.95 million of unpaid construction commitments of which Lake Boulevard is a part. The point is this: to assert that borrowed money is the only type of debt is a misconception. Suppose, for example, you incur a large medical bill. That is a debt, even though it is not borrowed money. Compensated absences. If you want to call compensated absences a normal, regular expense, they then would have to have been funded as they are earned. But they're not. Instead, compensated absences are an unfunded expense paid when the employee leaves the city. That is a debt. Retirement benefits. The portion of the retirement benefits that are not funded is called unfunded actuarial accrued liability. The key word is unfunded. If you have an unfunded retirement liability, you set up a payment schedule with what are called annual required contributions. These are analogous to required bond payments. Even though you are periodically paying the required pension contribution, that does not mean the pension debt does not exist. That is like saying because bond payments are part of the budget that there is no bond debt. I encourage people to Google public retirement debt. Websites will emerge all over the place referencing retirement and pension debt. I'm going to describe a couple of examples, and then I'm going to hand out several others. The Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research published a paper titled Pension Debt, California Public Employee Pension Systems. A Pew Charitable Trust report states, preliminary data from 2014 point to a reduction in unfunded liabilities for the majority of states. Nevertheless, pension debt is expected to remain between $800 billion and $900 billion for state plans. Now, have I been giving out erroneous information? No. I pulled my numbers directly out of the 12/31/14 annual statement, just as Pete did. So here's my motivation. Let us be transparent. Let us make full disclosure to the public. Let the financial pro, when he or she gets here, list all these items, maybe more. Let us not suppress information. Along those lines, as a public service, I've calculated the debt as of 12/31/13. That number is $59.2 million. Thank you.
Thank you for keeping your comments under the 3 minutes. You must have practiced that one.
I practiced.
Thank you. So, anyone else?
Randy?
Randy, you got to say do something.
I'm sorry?
Do you have one for me?
Did you get one?
Here.
I got you.
Okay, thank you.
Here, Pete, I got one for you.
I'll make other copies.
I can make copies
And
from
two.
this. Thank you.
Got it? Okay.
Next up is Mr. Bill Busaka.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to have a little balanced agenda tonight here. I'm Bill Busaka at 612 West Birch. I'd like to pose a little bit different viewpoint than Randy has, and that is that it's generally not part of normal accounting procedures to add in debt for the future. It's only debt that's already been incurred. If we did that, right now, I mean, we're worried about the best numbers we come up with is a true present debt of $49 to $50 million for the city of Shelton. By comparison, the federal government deficit is $59,000 per person as opposed to $5,000 per person. So it's over 11, the national debt is over 11 times what the city of Shelton is. And that doesn't even account for the tens of thousands of mortally wounded veterans from the Middle East who would have died in this, if you've seen anything lately on the Civil War, would have easily died in the Civil War and now are kept alive at a huge cost to the taxpayer, which is not involved in the federal budget. So we have some creative disinformation here where we're adding in, I don't know whether these are Tea Party numbers or where these numbers are coming from to justify not spending money. And my concern is that if, we're worried about spending money on a well, I'd like to see how many people in this room have paid cash for all the cars they bought in the last 30 years. I'd like to see who's paid cash for all the houses they bought in the last 30 years. You cannot incur large-term capital improvements by paying cash. It's just not realistic. So what I would like to say is let's have a little bit different viewpoint of looking at things here and not incur on pretend future debt. Yes, we are going to have to pay for retirement and medical leave and all that kind of jazz, but I'm going to have a big PUD bill and a cable bill and whatever for the next 10 years, but right now my long-term debt is zero. So, how do you want to add up the numbers?
Thank you for your comment. That's at the moment. There's another opportunity later in the meeting. Anybody would like to speak? So, what we are now is moving on into the consent agenda portion of our meeting, and are we ready for that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, could we please have a reading of the consent agenda?
Consent agenda, vouchers numbered 11948 through 12037 in the amount of $414,432.30. Handwritten warrant numbered 11947 in the amount of $24,814.83. Commission meeting minutes from business meeting of June 20th, 2016, and study session of June 27th, 2016.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
I make a motion to accept the consent agenda as read. I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda passes. Now, we have no old business, and we actually have no new business tonight, but we do have a item talking about the well that was referred to earlier, and different options on that. And we're going to turn the meeting over to our acting city administrator, Pete Butkus, at this time.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Commissioners. Just a little comment here for Public Works Director Clark to begin this presentation. Now, we're acting on previous commission action to avoid additional debt if possible and looking at water system improvements. And I'm pretty pleased with the work that staff has done towards that direction for the commission. We provided you some possible resolution to the issues we face at lower cost. And I'll note that we're going to do a little more lengthy walkthrough with this because we're not only speaking to you tonight, but the audience and the people at home who are watching this, so you're going to get just a little more background than you would normally ever receive. And with that, I'll turn it over to my director.
Thank you, Pete. I'm going to go up to the microphone here so I can see the presentation on the screen. And hopefully everybody has one of these handouts I copied. And if not, let me know, and I'll be happy to get one of those for you. Either email it to you or you can pick it up upstairs. So tonight, like Pete mentioned, we're going to go through some options. We actually came up with several options, and we decided to drill down and we got to figure out how to work this. There we go. So there's in the water issues, so to speak, looking at our comp plan and that, we have two main areas of concern. One is water supply, and the other is water storage. So on the water supply, we had a March of 16 of this year, we had a consultant go through our water system, model it, and determine based on information that we gave him what our current situation is. And this table 1.3 is pulled out of that report, and it shows you a couple pieces of information. The health department determines what our required demand is based on our average daily demand, and that is sitting at right around 1,098 gallons per minute we need to be able to pump. And down below you can see our water supply. Currently we have 3 wells in town. We have well 1, which maximum capacity is 1,500 gallons per minute. We typically operate that well at about 1,100 gallons per minute, and we'll share a lot more information on that. But given its current situation, we are unable to count it in towards our required our required average daily demand because it's not reliable right now. Every time we turn it on, we have to shut it off fairly soon. So really, we're running on wells 3 and 4, and in this calculation, to determine whether you're deficient or not, you have to remove your largest well. So well 4 comes off, so really we're running on well 3 as per the defined average daily demand calculations, and you can see we're actually about 100 gallons per minute in deficit right now. So that's, in short, the supply requirements. Storage, we're going to come back and talk a lot more about in a couple of weeks, but as you know, based on our comp plan, we were required to build a 1 million gallon tank to satisfy the deficit we have. And that deficit is calculated out of our 2010 water system plan that we did. And also we had a consultant review the storage needs in 2013 when we started the design on Upper Mountain View. And that particular report is shown in table 1.4. We are right around 690,000 gallons short, and we have an existing deficiency in Mountain View pressure zone of 310, which totals the 1 million gallons, and that's why that's the amount of storage we were planning on installing. So the new storage down below is that 1 million gallon tank, which is now on hold. And then, as you know, we just currently constructed the new elevated tank out towards Mason County Public Works, and that's going to store right around 410,000 gallons. So we're roughly 590 gallons short of being able to meet our storage requirements. Like I say, tonight I just want to focus really on the options of how do we deal with well 1, because that's kind of the immediate need, not that the other need goes away, but we want to make sure we can share these options with the commission, and hopefully in 2 weeks we'd like to come back and have the commission make a decision on what option maybe they would like us to move forward with. This is a pretty urgent matter to kind of drill down and make a decision on. So, and maybe that decision is to do nothing, but hopefully one of these will be attractive, and we'll be able to make a little progress. And I said the storage, we're going to come back in a few weeks and drill into that independent. So starting out with the source being the wells, what we've experienced, we started out with our comp plans telling us that we needed to do something to rehabilitate or replace well 1. That was defined in the 2010 comp plan. In the last 2 years, especially last summer, and now we're experiencing it right now, when we turn on well 1, the drawdown of the static level to where it sits in the running, it draws it down to within 10 feet of the pump head. And at that point, we have to shut it off. We can't pump, and that's actually been dialing down from the 1,100 gallons per minute to slightly less than that, trying to allow that well to run as much as we can, but once that drawdown happens, we have to turn it off. We don't know what the remaining life is on well 1. Right now, it's kind of bleak. The Robinson Noble hydrological study that was done as part of that design report for the design of Upper Mountain View in 2013 showed that, and they indicated they felt it needed to be replaced. And so actually our design group has went forward with that, and we've designed a new well 5. But as you know, we brought that forward, and it was $1.3 million, and the commission, did not want to move forward with that. They wanted us to look at more options. So we've developed several more options. Looking again at that well 1 before we get into the options, well 1 is our number one well. It has the calculated capacity, and if we run it at maximum, when it was new, it would put out about 1,500 gallons per minute. And as I mentioned, we only operate that currently at about 1,100. And without that particular well online and functioning, we may have to limit development, depending on what the health department allows us to move forward with. We may have to do some kind of conservation, be it water rationing, alternate day watering, that kind of thing, to reserve and allow the tanks, the storage to fill back up. There's obviously fire flow concerns without well one in operation, and we also have no backup or redundancy for wells 3 or 4. So it's a pretty fundamental key piece of our water utility. The funding concerns are obviously at our doorstep. We, of course, received and got approved in June of 2014 the ability to move forward with Upper Mountain View Phase 1. And that particular financial package says that all the work that was defined in that package, the scope of work, needs to be completed by 2018, June of 2018. And what that really means is that we can build this facility, we can build the tanks, we can build the wells, we can do all the work that we need to do, including some of the option work that we're going to share tonight with this money, but we don't have to pay it back until June of 18 when the construction would be completed, which is a pretty huge opportunity to actually, we could submit the bills, get payments for the contractors, but we don't have to start repaying that loan until after June of 18. The Department of Commerce in this, we've talked to them at depth, and they really said that kind of the track history is that they don't allow for time extensions. So we, depending on what we want to build with this money, if it's the storage tank especially, we need to probably move fairly swiftly. Well one, if we replace it, as we talked before, we got a little more time with that, but still, we need to be completely done with the work by probably physically complete by March of 2018 in order to close it by the end of June. And there's a small scope of work change that has to happen, but I'm not really too concerned with that. Mike and I, we talked to the Department of Health, and they, it seems very, very likely that the options we're talking about tonight, along with any of the previous discussed items, are will satisfy the scope of the current project. From an economic standpoint, this low-interest loan that we have the ability to take advantage of course, is 1% interest over 20 years, and those payments wouldn't need to start until after June of 18. Those debt service payments were included in the current utility rates, so there wouldn't need to be a rate increase in order to make those debt service payments on all of the money that we theoretically could borrow if we wanted to in this opportunity. Thinking about that, construction costs typically go up 3 to 4% a year. And if we wait too long, that 1%, the amount we're paying on interest for 20 years gets eaten up pretty fast by construction inflation. So the other thing is the future loan. If we don't take advantage of this loan and we won't go after a loan in the future, again, these things are running between 3 and 5% because that is what the different agencies are able to. Typically, they go with the bond rates, and bond rates are somewhere between 3 and 5%. So if we go to borrow future money, it's probably going to be in the 3 to 5% interest range, and then. Of course, the unavailability for a utility to get loans is difficult at best, and future loans for this type of work, we don't even know if they're going to be available. So it's just some items to think about when we're looking at the finance side of paying for these construction projects. So here are the 7 options that staff, and I'm going to go into detail on each one of these, went through. We sat down with a group of people back in, it was June 15th, and we sat down. It was Mike Michael, Craig Gregory, Pete Butkus, and we had a gentleman, Jason Zach from Arcadia Well Drilling came in and helped us through this kind of troubleshooting ideas. We had Regina Grimm from Department of Health. She's a regional engineer from there. We had Susan Clark from the Department of Health. She's a regional planner that works with the comp plans. And we all sat down in a conference room and we said, what can we do for well one? What options, what kind of permitting needs are there, that kind of thing. And so these are the list of the items that came out of that meeting. Obviously, we can rehabilitate the existing well one.
Excuse me, you
different
said-
from...
Just curious. Obviously, we can rehabilitate existing well one. Obviously, what do you mean rehabilitate it? What would that mean? How would you do that?
I've got a slide on that, Mayor. If-
On how they would rehabilitate?
Exactly.
Oh, okay, I'm good, because this is
Yep.
new to me.
Yeah, I'll go into detail on each one of these.
Okay.
The other option that came out of the meeting, and is an attractive one, is to actually just lower the existing pump in the well casing itself. The third one was possibly to utilize wells at Sanderson Field, which were Port of Shelton wells. The fourth one was Simpson has a well that possibly, it's a private well, but possibly we could use it for city water, so we looked into that. The thought was maybe we could reopen Shelton Springs as a source. And then 6 was, well one's replacement, the project that's currently designed. Is there a way we can phase that to spend money slower over a couple years or 3 years to do that project? And then there's this number 7 hybrid option, which really is the combination of option 1 and 2. And that's actually going to be the staff's recommendation of what maybe we can go forward with, or hope we can go forward with. It's pretty attractive. So rehabilitating the existing well, as you know, the drawdown curves, as I mentioned before, bring that running water above the pump itself down to, within about 10 feet, and that's just very, very, you can't do that. So anyway, we gathered the team together, and we came together with, how to do that, and I'll get into that a little bit more later, but the cost for, re-drilling well 1 was 1.3 million, and so this particular option is less than that. It's right around 600,000, and there's another slide. I get more into detail on this option 1 and 2 when I talk about option 7. Which is the combination of those two. Anyway, we don't know what life we can get out of well 1 once it's rehabbed, but we do think it has a strong likelihood to be reconditioned and usable for a, in talking to Arcadia, they do this all the time, and we won't know for sure until we actually engage in this project, but it looks very strong as a promising idea. It may not gain us much service life. It depends on what we find once we start doing it. But the professionals, like I say, they seem to think it was more of a desirable than the report that we had done for the design of well 5. The hydrological report indicated that we needed to replace well 1, which is what we ended up suggesting. But in looking at this a little bit more, this actually rehabilitating the well is a good idea. Also, we know what we have there. Once we pull the pump out and we can camera it, we're going to know a lot better. So option 2, and this idea came up, which it's really exciting because it's something we could actually do this year, and that is to actually just not pull the pump out, the existing pump, but just add some extra sections of pipe on and lower it into the well casing about 42 feet. And that would give us a lot more drawdown capability. This particular option would maybe cost us between $15,000 and $20,000. It's a maintenance type of thing. It doesn't require Department of Health permitting. We don't know exactly, if once we start lowering and stuff, that could it cause damage to the pump? I mean, there's some things that could go wrong, but the strong likelihood is that this is a really good idea, and it's a quick turnaround, and it's something that would, I think, give us a lot of service life through this, kind of dry spell ahead of us, and then we can move forward possibly with the rehabilitation. So the service life, we don't know. I mean, the pump that's in the hole right now, the existing pump, is 27 years old. And a typical pump has a life of 25 to 35 years. And so that pump is at its, kind of service limits. But it's a lot more expensive to pull it out. So we just like I say, we'd like to just push it further down into the well shaft and see if we can't reduce that problem of the drawdown curve. It does have a little higher head. If you put it down 42 feet, it's got to pump water 42 feet higher, but that's not a real concern. We're going to lose a little bit in gallons per minute, but it should function just fine. Well 3, this was the Sanderson Airport, utilized their existing wells, and it was a good idea. Their wells only could probably give us 80 to 200 gallons per minute, and of course we need over 1,000, so it's not really a good option. And we found out in talking in more in depth that the port's water rights couldn't be transferred anyway, so that one's really off the table. Option 4 that came up as an idea is Simpson's private well. They've been using this well to facilitate their fire suppression system down there, and they actually continue to need that, and so this well wasn't found to be really usable for. We'd also have to do a lot of testing to determine, whether or not the water is good water, to be potable water. Depends on what the testing would determine. We probably have to do a bunch of things, chlorination and other things. So I'm not sure this is even, but it's really not on the table because they need the water for their fire suppression for the new Sierra Pacific and the Maggie Timber facilities down there. The 5th option was reopening Shelton Springs. And of course, this has been on our comp plan, but it's a pretty good chunk of money to get it to be able to use the water. Probably the most limiting thing here is, again, in the summer, the spring only puts out about 850 gallons per minute under low flow conditions. We'd have to do some kind of chlorine or ultraviolet treatment of the water in order to make it potable to put it into our system. It possibly would require us to rehabilitate the existing gravity line to the high school tank or do some kind of injection system for chlorination. So again, you'd probably have to spend $1 million to get this thing up and functioning. And then when you do that, you're only going to get about 850 gallons per minute, which this wouldn't be our highest recommendation, even though I think somewhere down the road, we maybe can take the water rights from well 5, from option 5 from the springs, and maybe move that to another well, because we do have the water rights that can be transferred. So option 6, this is just going back to the project that we wanted to move forward on, the $1.3 million of drilling well 5. We think 2 contracts would be the way you'd want to put this out. One contract would be for about $500,000, and that would be just to sink a new shaft, because the shaft needs to go down over 700 feet into the 2 aquifers. And then the contract 2 would be to install the pump and the piping and the well house and do all the remaining amount of work, and that's about another $800,000 worth of work. So it's still around that 1.3, which was the number that the commission wanted to do something a little less expensive. So obviously a new well is a new well. You never know what problems you run into, though, sinking a shaft 700 and some odd feet, so you could run into problems. But assuming that all went well, you'd still have more loan, I think, than the commission wants to move forward with. Option 7, this is kind of where staff would like to see the commission really consider this one strongly, and we do this over 2 phases. The first phase is lowering that existing pump. This would cost us right around $15,000 to $20,000. Could be done this summer, and we'd like to move forward with this as soon as we can. Get it on our Arcadia's calendar and move forward with this as a maintenance item. We think this can buy us some time and allow us to construct or rehabilitate that existing well 1 over the winter months. I already talked about the pump and everything being 27 years old, so I mean this just buys us some time, but it's a good expenditure. I put this drawing together to kind of give you, and it's pretty small on the screen, but you can probably see it on your handout a little bit better. But it gives you an idea of kind of what we have out there. Let me find it in my. So At the surface, we have an existing shaft casing of around 16 inches, and that goes down about 299 feet. And then it necks down to a 12-inch casing, and that takes you down into the two aquifers. The pump is sitting 220 feet below the surface, and when you have, the historic static head, which is at the resting condition where the water levels is brought up to, is right around 185 feet. When that pump used to have, that was the old historic kind of resting static head. Now we're finding it about 10 feet lower than that. And that's part of the problem, is we don't have as much head as we used to have. We're not too sure what causes that, but that's just what the guys have been seeing and looking at the different SCADA reports and that. When the pump kicks on, it draws down about 15 feet. And so before, we had roughly about 15 feet above the pump during running operations, and that was fine, didn't give us any problems. Now that that's 10 feet lower, it draws it down to within 10 feet of the top of the pump, and that's where the problems are rising, and we have to shut it off. So the vision here, like I says there, option 2, is to lower that pump about 42 feet. We have 62 feet from the bottom of the pump to where that casing necks down. And so there's about 20 feet to spare. We assume that we should be able to just lower that pump right straight on down for 42 feet and be good. But you never know what might be in the way, blocking it or something that might. But for every foot we can push it down is a foot gained. And so this seems like a pretty attractive option. Aquifer number 1 doesn't actually start until about 328 feet below in the casing. So all the water that's coming to the pump isn't coming through the solid shaft of the casing until you get down to aquifer. There between 328 and 400 feet is the first where the water comes through some slots that are cut in the casing. And then the second aquifer is roughly about 115 feet below that at 515, and it goes all the way down to 747, which is the bottom of the well right now. And so what they do to clean this well, under the rehabilitation side of it, is they would pull that pump all the way out, and that takes quite a bit of effort. We'd have to demo the well house building, and so they can clean it. But they would pull all the pump out and all the pressure line out and all the electrical wires and everything, and so you'd have just a clean shaft. And what they'll do then is it's kind of like getting your teeth cleaned. You need to do it every so often, and we haven't done this in 27 years, so it's probably pretty cluttered up with sedimentation and mineral deposits, and who knows what all has gone into this thing over 27 years. But what they do is they basically take and lightly brush this thing with different types of scrubbers, and well, first thing they do is after they pull the well pump out, they would camera it. They'd stick a camera all the way to the bottom and see exactly what we have. And from that, they would determine the type and amount of cleaning to be done. But it's really something they do all the time. And the gentleman from Arcadia, he said this is a very good candidate and he had a great promise. He seemed to think he'd be able to make this thing quite a bit more productive for moving water up to the new pump. So we would clean this, get it as clean as we can, and then we would put a brand new pump down in the shaft and bring it down to this same elevation, about 42 feet below where the existing pump sits right now. And that would, and then we would size the pump to be able to pump a higher head, because it obviously has a 42 feet more of a head than the existing pump. But we also want it to be able to pump all the way out to Upper Mountain View pressure zone, because we want to get the water to the highest level of our system. And this actually, if this works, which it should, would eliminate the need for a booster pump station that was included in the design for well 5. So this is, like I say, a pretty attractive offer. And let me go into the next slide here. So the cost of doing, the well 1 design engineer, we'd have to hire an engineering company to help us size the pump and determine exactly, what its pump curve is and horsepower and all the impellers and stuff that you select. But we figure that would be less, $30,000 or less to do that engineering. The pump rehabilitation work would cost roughly about $120,000, and that would include the cost of a new pump. I'm thinking my public works guys will remove that existing well house, get it out of the way. It would include the costs of pulling that old pump out and the pressure line, cammering the existing well, determining the cleaning requirements, and then basically installing a new pump and new pressure line. And then the other things that would need to happen in conjunction with this is we'd like to put in a VFD, variable frequency drive, so that we can operate that pump at different speeds, which will allow us to regulate how much water we pull out of there. That VFD is right around $25,000 to do that, but we need to do it in conjunction with this project if we're going to put a new pump down there. The crews would rebuild that pump house. We figure that's around $20,000. And probably the big ticket item here is installing the water line, the pressure line, to take this up to Mountain View, to Upper Mountain View, which is $400,000. So this particular option, as we're rolling it out here, is right around $600,000 that we could do this rehabilitation work, and we could do this over the winter and have it ready to go for next summer. And this is certainly eligible for the loan money that is available to us. So again, the pros and cons, I think I've already touched on. And probably the big one here is that it eliminates that $1 million booster pump station that was part of the Well 5. And again, it's significantly less than the $1.3 million that we brought forward before. Again, we don't really know about the condition of the existing casing, but we certainly will once we camera it. And it would be nice to just have a new pump in that particular well, because this one's 27 years old. So that's kind of the end of my discussion here. I'd be happy to answer any questions the commission might have. I've got Mike here, my city engineer, and Craig Gregory, my superintendent. So I want to really answer as many questions as I can.
I have some.
Great.
Can I go?
Sure.
Or you want to go first?
No, you can go first.
Okay, so first question is, why have we never maintained that pump in 27 years? Is it just no one thought about it, or no one told us we had to do it? Money was never there? What goes
No,
on there?
I think it's something that we should have probably done.
Right.
It just never really came on the radar. The thing's been working fine up until here last year when we had the drawdown problems. And I don't know, Mike, do you have any history on that?
Well, and Craig was just sending me a note via lip reading there. It's not really the pump, it's the well casing itself that we're really talking about maintaining. And there's twofold reason that it doesn't get done very often. One, you have to pull the pump out to do that, and it's very costly to do that. Two, every time you pull the pump, there's a risk of damaging it and having to replace it. And the pumps, because of the size of them and as much water as they need to move, they're expensive in themselves. So really what it should be done about the cycle when the pump's replaced. We're about to that point again. Historically, we can't tell if it was done with the last pump replacement. We suspect it probably wasn't. It would have likely been a good thing to do then had somebody thought about it, but we can't find in the records where it would have been done back then.
Can you television it every 15, 20 years to see how it's holding up? Or you can't do that?
Again, to do that, you've got to pull the pump out of the hole. You've got, there's only so much space in there. So with the equipment we've historically had, no, that's probably not something that was available. As portable cameras are getting smaller, in 15 years, we may be able to do that. So
Also, the, oh gosh, what was I going to say? gosh, I forgot what I was gonna say, went out my mind. I have one more question here. Grant money, is there any money there can be tapped into to help with this project?
The grant monies have been expended on this. What we have left out of the existing funding package is all loan money at this point.
All right.
We-
Okay.
You can come back to you. I mean, we
I'm
can-
done.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
Tracy, did you-
I'm done.
Yes, I do. So you were talking about the gentleman from Arcadia Well who has experience with this type of project. And I was wondering if he works, if he has expertise on working on a well that's as deep and as large as this?
He does. Arcadia is, there's three, as I understand it, main kind of well drilling, well servicing companies in really the Puget Sound area here. And Arcadia has been our source for helping us service they did well for last year for us. But yes, they're very capable of doing this type of work. And,
Okay, so he knows what he's looking at as far as the
he's
capacity.
very
he
knowledgeable. He's
needs.
been in the business a long time, and he brought to our attention that, he would not even be recommending this unless he thought it was a really good thing to try, because kind of his reputation as a company is on the line too. The fact that he's recommending this means that it is a very, there's not much risk, that there's, I don't know, Pete, do you have any other on that as far as how you felt about how his recommendation was?
Yes, I can add. We on?
You're on if your button's on.
All right. I can add to that. First of all, Commission, all the options, including the drilling of a new well, which was originally recommended in the study, have rewards and risks. There's no guarantee, for example, if you go 1,000 feet away from well one and drill a new well, that you will get sufficient or even any water. And I can't overemphasize this. We've at the staff level looked at all the options and the relative risks and feel the most comfortable with the recommendation of hybrid option 1 and 2 together. I'll also note that putting the camera down and making an examination and then a cleaning is not unlike a periodic dental exam, where you have your teeth looked at and you have them cleaned, and maybe you discover some other issues at the same time. We don't know if we will or not. And for the public that's present and listening, this is the nature of the business. We've put forth for you to something we think that'll work. It'll work at less money or less cost, and it provides for a period of time, which is also undetermined, the water supply that we need to move ahead. So I think I felt pretty good about the recommendations as formulated by the group. I noticed that the Department of Health representatives were comfortable with it. And so we have a combination of activities that we would have liked to have seen take place 15 years ago, but didn't. But we're certainly proposing that we do it now. So that's my summation. There's risks and rewards in every option that's here. We just happen to think that the ones that we're recommending professionally are the ones that you should give the strongest consideration to. But in any case, we're going to take the commission direction and go implement it, whatever it is.
Okay. I had a couple more questions here. So at the time that the process is happening, we're saying we don't know the condition, we don't know if the casing will be cracked or, any of those kind of things. Is that something that we'll know immediately at the time they're working on it, so that if we had to do some work on the casing or replace parts of the casing we're not planning on, we would be able to do it at that point?
Well, the phase one of the work and just lowering the existing pump 42 feet, that would be an unknown, just pushing it down and hoping it doesn't hit or become, stuck or damaged. Because pulling it all the way out, all 220 feet
Yeah.
is a long way to pull it out and pretty expensive. So the idea of that is just pushing it down, and we won't know because we won't have cambered it. If we go to the rehabilitation, being phase 2 of option 7, then we would have cambered it and we'd know what's there. And
Oh,
we'd
I
see
see.
if there's any damage. I don't think casings typically get damaged, but they do get plugged up with mineral deposits and other related things that are maybe brought in, with all this water being pumped over time, a lot of stuff has been brought into the casing. So the cleaning of it and getting all of that debris out of there, and they have different ways of I guess getting that. Once you clean it, you have to go down and remove all of the cleaning deposits that end up in the bottom of the shaft, and they would do that. But Jason, he seemed to think, from Arcadia, he seemed to think that this was, just part of what they do. I mean, we know so much more by cameraing it, and because we have no camera information at all, but we'd certainly know. And I don't know, Mike, is there damage to the casing? I don't think those casings get damaged, really.
Typically not. As Jason mentioned in our meeting, the real concern would be actually deterioration of the casing. And a well that deep has got a really thick casing wall on it. It's been fully submerged. Like he mentioned, it's not a well that gets a huge amount of drawdown. You saw from the charts that we presented that it's about 25 feet. So most of the casing is fully submerged all the time. It's not going to deteriorate. It's not going to rust where it's not being cycled like that. So he used a lot of the same thought process and information that Robinson Noble did. He just had a slightly different take on it. And after thinking through it, listening to him, listening to our regional engineer from Department of Health, as Greg and Pete both mentioned, reevaluating all of the information, including this new information, we think this is a really good option for the commission to consider, and we think it has a high probability of being successful.
So so if there were problems that were found, the repair of that would be part of this process as well. I guess that's what I'm asking is, will we be prepared to deal with any unforeseen issues?
We would have to, take those hurdles as they come at us, I guess, and evaluate them and bring the commission results of the cameraing. And if something is found that's very concerning that would make it, an unusable shaft or casing, I don't think that's a strong probability at all. I do think they probably can do some kind of repairs from the top, but I don't know what those would include. But certainly cleaning it and getting the sedimentation and a lot of the debris and stuff that's come into the casing that I think is what is limiting the amount of water we can pull out of that shaft right now. It's just it's needing a good cleaning, and then we'll also know the condition of it as well once we do that.
Okay, and it looks like the hybrid option here would save about $700,000. So and it's about half of what the 1.3 option is. So I'm thinking that the debt service that we would be paying on the 1.3 mil was, if I remember correctly, about $590,000 over the life of the loan. So I'm thinking this would be about half of that as well.
I'd have to get back to you on that, Tracy. I don't have those numbers, but that sounds about right to me.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate all the work that you've gone through for this, and I think that I would, at this point, at least like to do pretty much anything that would enable us to keep promoting building. I am very disturbed by that some of these options that we're not speaking about anymore would limit our building, the capacity for building in our community. And then also, I don't think anybody really wants to water ration, although it might be a greener thing to do, but I think I would be really hesitant to promote that. Okay, so that's all my questions.
And again, we're going to think about this for a week, talk to Pete, and then we're going to get back on this. Because like I said, we have time to think about this. And I really, really appreciate the second look at this. One question. The new pressure line, the $400,000 line, that is not really necessary right today to do that line, is it?
We would strongly recommend we do that. It puts us into a functional operating problem in that we can't get the water into Upper Mountain View pressure zone, which having a single source for that whole pressure zone is not the best situation.
But that, theoretically, you could clean the screens, and replace the pump, look at the pump, camera the thing, build a new pump house. You could do all that $200,000 job, and then put that new pressure line in. You could do that.
We could do that.
That is a
But-
possibility, because the water, you do this with, fix the well and make sure it's a nice, redone well, and then the $400,000 could be done at a later date. Could be.
It could be.
Okay. That's all the questions I have, and I'm looking forward to taking this back to the drawing board and looking at it. And so, any other questions?
Just a clarifying comment on that, Mayor. The $400,000 for the pressure line is assuming that we can take advantage of some conditions we have now. We have a current contract that we can take advantage of, and so that $400,000 is making that assumption. That number would actually have to come up some, and I don't know how much the sum would be until we looked into it
For the low-interest loan?
Well, no, for additional engineering, for additional project administration, ad award, bidding type things to go out and get a new contract in place to do that work at a later date.
Okay.
Yeah, what Mike is saying there is, we are currently under contract for Phase 1 of Upper Mountain View, and included in that contract is piping, water main installation, and we can take advantage of the fact that we have competitive bids on that right now, and that's why the price is what it is around the $400,000.
All right. Any other questions?
Oh, I don't have any questions. I want to say thank you, Greg, and thank you, Mike, and Pete, and whoever was. Yeah, and yes, that was involved in this project, in really looking into it. I believe in options. I don't believe in running out and doing it because someone says you have to. There's always an option, a good one or a bad one, but exploring those options, you're going to find out if it's good or bad, and if it's good, you go for it. So I want to acknowledge you guys for doing this work. I really do appreciate it a lot. Thank you very much.
And I will say that, sometimes we're all working together. We got a lot of flack right off for not jumping right into the $1.3 million well, but it was appreciative that John Tarrant came into my store today and thanked me for waiting and looking at options on this, because, you had a study that said this is what we need to do. Well, let's go back to the drawing board. Maybe we'll find something a little different. And so, anyway, I think it's a team working together, and I'm really appreciative that we have some options to look at. So, if that ends the questions, we don't take questions from the public. What we can do is have, at a time period which is called the, general public comment period, you can easily come back up and speak if you would like, okay?
No, it was answered here.
Okay.
All right, so thank you very much for that. And at this time, I'm going to turn this over to our interim city administrator, Pete Butkus, for further administration reports.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Just noting that it's noted for next week on July 11th, looking ahead, that we're going to have a draft letter to you for review and approval, sent to the State Department of Transportation concerning a potential project on 101 associated with the Hall equities. I will note that just today we received a copy of a letter that the Mason County Commissioner sent to the State Department of Transportation regarding that same project. So it'll be something similar to that, just for your information. And again, we're planning, unless Commission directs us otherwise, to come back in 2 weeks from tonight and talk further and hope to get some direction from you on our water supply options.
All right. Very good. Next is the opportunity for general public comment. Anybody else like to say anything? This is that opportunity for 3 minutes. And so if you did, this would be the time. If you want to let your thought go, then we can move forward to the next agenda item.
We have Mr. Forrest Cooper.
Mr. Cooper came and signed up, okay? I didn't even see him, so welcome.
You didn't see me. I like that. That's awesome.
Yeah, you
Just blending into the
like a
shadows
stealth
back
bomber
there.
or something.
Well, thank you very much, Commission. Mr. Mayor, I'm Forrest Cooper, 409 West Railroad and 807 South 14th. In regard to the well issue, I'd like to start by applauding all parties involved for coming up with some options that can be more affordable and close to as effective. To the commission, good job asking for more info and options, and most importantly, not ignoring the problem. To Public Works and city staff, good job sitting down and taking time to explore other options and coming up with some very good solutions. Now, for a small bit of criticism. For future situations such as this, maybe it's a good idea to really evaluate the problem and possibly pursue multiple solutions prior to settling on one option brought forth by a hired consultant. Over the years, I have seen many new car approaches taken by our city staff and Public Works, when a simple or even extensive repair would have less impact on the community and ratepayers. So remember the old used car versus new car approach. According to consumerreports.org, hold this up right now as I sit and listen to this, it says the average life expectancy of a new vehicle these days is around 8 years or 150,000 miles. Of course, some well-built vehicles can go 15 years and 300,000 if properly maintained. Keep that in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else? Hearing none, is there,
I didn't sign up, could I?
well, you signed up before, you're more than welcome to come up and speak, sure.
I just got a question for Greg. So, since the well is operating at 200 and whatever it is, I loved your diagram, it's a great diagram. And the bottom of the lower aquifer goes to 747 or whatever, so you got almost 500 feet of aquifer there or something like that. Can you, with a 16-inch casing, I'm just thinking in terms of engineering and mechanics, I certainly don't know what you guys know, but if the casing were damaged anyway, could you put a smaller casing in there? In other words, could you go to a pump? I mean, right now you're working with a pump that's in a 16-inch casing. Could you put a 14 or whatever, I mean, a smaller casing in there, and then a high-powered pump with a smaller diameter? In other words, is that possible? I mean, when I consider how many feet of water you've got there, I like the idea of just using the existing one and improving its capabilities if possible, if you run into problems with the casing.
I really don't know what the ability is to reduce the size of the casing or slide a piece of casing down in. You certainly can size pumps, and they have different size pumps for different casings. So I think the possibility of going with a smaller diameter pump is an option. I don't know what the limitations are. The pump, we don't want to get too deep into the casing, though, because for every foot you put it down, you got to pump the water up. But there's a variety, I think, of engineering solutions based on what we find as to what we bring back as a recommendation.
So basically, you have a lot of options to, you can probably get the same horsepower with a smaller diameter with today's technology, but then so the main thing is you wouldn't necessarily have to drill a brand new well from scratch. You could probably do various options with what you've got.
I believe, yes, that's exactly true.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Yes, come up and you can speak again. Randy, anyone, I'll sign you up right there. State your name for the record.
Randy Lewis. I want to say, too, I'm very impressed and amazed what Greg and Mike and their guys did in such a short period of time. That's pretty amazing to me. I did have a couple questions and mainly curiosity. I was just curious, the 1.31% loan, this has probably been out there before, but how long is that available? Just curious, before it's rescinded or however that works.
The existing work has to be all completed by June 30th of 2018. So we need to be physically complete with all work that we're going to engage on by probably March of 18. We need to be done. If we're going to build storage tanks out of it, or new wells, or rehab, or any of this work that's eligible for the loan money, we would need to be complete with that work by March of 18.
Okay, great.
Thank you. All right, seeing no other signed-in comment people, this is any administration final touches. Pete, do you have any more final touches? Michaels has one.
Not really a touch, but just a reminder to folks that Lake Boulevard construction is still going on. We're getting near the end. The roads are still closed. Do not go around the barricades into the closed section of the roads, please. There are people working there most of the time,
Right,
so.
there's media here, and I'm sure they're going to write that one up.
Does that mean me too?
Yeah, everybody.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
So,
Okay.
do not drive on the road.
Are
All
you saying
right.
no to us?
Any other administration final touches? Seeing none. Our next meeting will be June 11th at 2 PM in the afternoon. This
June?
meeting- Yeah, it says June.
July, we're
Well-
in July.
Yeah, I understand that. I just, I'm not going to say who wrote that, but July 2016 at 2 PM in the afternoon. This meeting's adjourned.